Go. Hi, this is Kathy Rainey, the Sports Medicine Director, and we're continuing our conversation with Jessica Smosna, the registered dietitian that we have been working with the last few years with our boarding population. This next segment is about how do students eat healthy, whether at home or within the dorm population. So some of the questions will be geared more towards day and more towards boarding, but we're going to try to hit both. So this is kind of a both question, Jessica. What do both day and boarding students need to pay attention to on a nutrition label?
Ooh, good question. So when I look at a nutrition fact label, I call it my label lingo approach. And it's generally speaking, I find that in working with individuals, the first thing we start to look at is calories and fat. I take a bit of a different approach and I'll explain why. But when I am looking at that nutrition fact label, I encourage that anyone, first of all, you want to look at the serving sizes because sometimes they try to trick us. So knowing how many servings you're consuming or, how many servings you want to have. And if you have multiple, then it will multiply those numbers based on how many servings. But naturally the eye might go to calories and fat. We're going to drop all the way down to carbohydrates. And so when you look at carbs, that's where I think of it kind of as this jar and lid analogy. And so when we have carbs, I think of it as this jar. And if we had an empty jar and put vapor gas in it, and there was no lid, that gas is going to escape. If we eat carbs on their own, our blood sugar spikes, and through a cascade of events that leads to more insulin, more fat storage, more inflammation. And it causes our energy to kind of be all over the place, as well as our cravings, and we just kind of feel off. And so the goal is that we always balance that or put a lid on that jar. And that lid is protein and quality fat, which seal the deal, slowing down digestion and absorption. So blood sugar is more like speed bumps as opposed to mountains and valleys. So when we look at that carb amount, let's say, hypothetically speaking, we're looking at a meal item, perhaps something that's prepared at like Whole Foods or H-E-B, and it says 42 grams of carbs. So we want to know, okay, well, that's a jar, an open jar. Is there adequate protein to balance this out? So we're going to drop down to protein, and we want to see that the amount of protein, grams, not percentages, is at least half the amount of carbs. So being that we have 42 grams of carbs, we want at least 21 grams of protein. So if we look at this item and it only has 12, then we know, okay, that's not at least half. So this is either really imbalanced, or maybe we can look at the fat. And so fat is also one of the lid components. And if it's quality fat, so that's where you want to look at the ingredients. And if it's fats that you recognize as opposed to, and this is where one of my handouts will kind of list the quality fats. But if it's more vegetable oil or soybean oil, canola oil, those aren't ideal fats. Things that we would ideally see would be olive oil or olives, some avocado, nuts and seeds, avocado oil, all of those that are more anti-inflammatory. And it's hard to find that in prepared products just because they are a little bit more expensive. So looking at it as a good, better, best spectrum. And if we want to take that fat, the grams of fat, let's say for this item is 12. We'll just keep it simple. So 12 grams of protein, 12 grams of fat. And we've looked at the ingredients and we recognize these fat sources. So we're going to add that 12 grams of fat plus the 12 grams of protein to equal 24 grams of a lid. 24 is now at least half of 42. So now this meal is balanced, right? And you can use this approach with any snack as well. So for example, I have a Lara bar right here. Which these are great for snacks. And so if I look at do that label lingo on here, I have one bar is one serving, and then it is going to be 25 grams of carbs for one bar. So ideally we want to see that protein is 12 and a half, right? Protein is only 5. However, the only ingredients are cashews and dates. So we know cashews are a quality fat. So we can add the 12 grams of fat plus the 5 grams of protein, which is 17, and 17 is greater than half of 25 grams of carbs. So therefore it makes it a more balanced snack. So when we're looking at any nutrition fact label, even if it's not what you would deem as a healthy option, you still want to see that you have balance. And if you don't, you have options of either avoid that, right? Or put it back on the shelf, or balance it out. So maybe add additional protein or additional fat through, it could even be, a canned tuna, or like if this is a prepared meal, or a piece of cheese or an egg, or maybe some avocado or olives or a drizzle of olive oil, just some things to balance that out so that we're helping to balance blood sugar more and help you feel better as well as promote better health.
Great. I really like that answer. Balance is the key.